Welcome to a brand new episode of the Bold Take Podcast. I'm Austin Hill. With me, as always, is Austin Waiter, and we're back talking college football action from another incredible weekend of college football. Really, we've seen teams slowly starting to make cases for maybe their right to the college football playoff. Couple teams in the Mountain West are heating up to kind of prove themselves worthy of that number 12 spot, and on the other hand, you kind of look around and you see some teams that we thought maybe these teams were going to be championship caliber, and a little bit of a slip up from one of those big time teams this weekend.
There's a couple of, we had three top 10 teams go down this weekend, most so
Almost
far
four.
this year. Yeah, almost four, almost four. You're right, almost four. Really, it should have been four, but that's a whole
Yeah.
nother discussion we're gonna have. But yeah, it was another great weekend. And I know people are gonna be like, oh, this weekend's gonna be bad. There's no elite matchup happening, this and that. This is where they get you. This is where they get you. You're gonna be like, oh, it's a
Absolutely.
Saturday, no big matchup. I'm not gonna pay as much attention. This is where there's always that one where you're like, how the heck did that happen? And it happens on Saturdays like this. Now I know not this coming Saturday, but the next two are incredible. But these are the kind of slates that get you ready for that. It's like maybe something could happen. You just never know for sure. But yeah, this past weekend was great. A lot of great games. A lot of, including like you mentioned, some big surprises, which we'll get to. But I just want to be known the game I said on here, if I could date this game, I would. Turned out to be a pretty successful date, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a completely fair point there. But look, let's start with the almost fourth top 10 team to drop their game, and that was on Friday night. Uh, and this is Miami, Virginia Tech squaring off. Um, and this was a back and forth game for Virginia Tech losing late. Look, this was back and forth, just unbelievable. The charge back by Virginia Tech, honestly, that kind of looked down and out early in this game to me. Kyle Drones had some turnovers, but they come back into this game really just trading blows with Miami. But really, the big story from this game comes on the very final play of the game. Uh, and right before that, manufacturing a fantastic drive was Cam Ward, made some of the most jaw dropping, unbelievable plays you've ever seen. Um, but Virginia Tech heaves the ball into the back of the end zone. A mass of bodies attaches itself to this ball. Really, the ball comes flying out at the end. There's just confusion, uproar. Nobody knows what's going on. The fans of Miami are going ballistic because they see the ball come out and they think incomplete pass. But the officials are meeting. Players are celebrating on the field. And then all of a sudden, it's a touchdown ruling on the field. Then they go back to replay, and we watched about 7,000 replays of completely inconclusive, incomprehensible, very disputable video evidence, one way or the other. Looked like one of the textbook cases of we're just going to have to go with what's called on the field because you can't see anything going on here. And look, it's overturned to an incomplete pass. Miami wins. They salvage the undefeated season. But look, I'm just going to start and be completely blatantly honest. Um, I've had some talks with some people, and a lot of consensus seems to be the same. This was not a catch. Yes, it should not have been called a catch on the field, but because it was called a catch on the field, there is no video proof anywhere unless the ACC would like to share whatever secret angle they think they might have had that shows that football definitively moving before the receiver is touching the ground. Uh,
Yeah.
so just should have been incomplete or should have stood, in my opinion. But I'd love to hear your thoughts and your perspective as always.
So yeah, number one, Cam Ward, I will say had his Heisman moment in this game with that phenomenal last ditch pitch that led to the
Yes.
touchdown at the end. That was his Heisman moment. Yeah. I thought Miami had this game won, and then obviously that last play happens, and all of a sudden, everyone's fighting for the ball down there, and the Miami player gets out with the ball and interception. I'm like, okay, game's over. Miami players are celebrating, lights are going off, and then I see the ref rule a touchdown. So, there's all kinds of confusion. But I'm right there with you, and I don't know what sources you have talked to that have confirmed what these thoughts are, but mine are
Yeah.
basically the same. Because looking at the replay, I'm like, there is no way you could look at that and say that that's a touchdown. I don't get how you could say that. If anything, they're both fighting for it simultaneously, and then it pops out at the end. To me, you rule that incomplete and it's over. However, I'm with you. They called it on the field touchdown. And when they looked at the millions of clips that they looked at, I'm still trying to figure out where they saw that this was incomplete because there's no way you could tell indisputably what that video evidence is. I don't get it. So like I think the right call in the end overall was made, like you said. I just think that the way it was handled and the way it went down was a complete disaster. That I mean, Virginia Tech got screwed because if it was ruled a touchdown on the field, I don't get how you could overturn that to an incomplete pass based on the video review. But in the end, I think they got the call right, just not the order I would have done it in.
Yeah, look, I think some people are going to come out and say, well, this is the point of replay review. It's to get the call done, get the right call at the end of the day. And I agree with what you're trying, like the essence of that idea. But look, there are a specific set of guidelines that you have to follow to make the right call. And I think the biggest issue myself and a lot of people have is this is an ACC conference mashup. It's only ACC officials on the field. It's only ACC officials in the booth. And this is a number 7 team in the country who's undefeated, playing against at the time a 2-2 ACC team. Look, and I'm not saying this is what happened, but this is easily how these rumors start to stir. What's better for the ACC? The team that's performing easily the best of any team in the ACC right now, looks better than anybody else in the ACC, outperforming even Clemson and Florida State, who had these high expectations that they're not quite meeting right now. What's better for the ACC? That Virginia Tech moves to 3-2 and knocks off their best team, or their best team survives a thriller and stays undefeated. And so I don't think that this was scripted. I don't think that somebody called into the booth and said, hey, this is the call you have to make. But look, things start to drum up. People start to get unhappy when these kinds of calls are made in these kind of situations. And maybe it had some influence. Again, let's just put the shoe on the other foot. I think if this was Virginia Tech and this same exact sequence came about, I don't think that this call gets overturned. I think they follow the rules, but I think they wanted to make sure that even though they were not within the rules to make the right call, they were going to make the right call for the sake of Miami season and for the sake of the ACC. I think,
I mean that's fair. That's fair. I think that's a fair accusation there with it, considering, like you mentioned, the ACC really no one stepping up and looking to be a part of the major player in the playoff or major high ranked. Besides Miami, Clemson is trying to get back up there. They still got a little ways to go. Louisville obviously lost, so they're trying to work their way back up, but no one is doing it like Miami. So it's a fair argument. It's a fair argument there.
yeah. Then we had Louisville Notre Dame, and look, despite what the score may show, this was kind of a slow grudge match here, especially near the end of the game. This came down to some defenses playing extremely well. But look, when I look at this game, I say the Irish, even though their offense was kind of up and down, started a little bit hot in this game, really kind of slowed down and cooled off. This defense, it's one of the best defenses in the country, and it showed out again why even when this offense struggles, Notre Dame is going to be a tough team to put away because once they get a lead, this defense does not like surrendering points.
Yeah, I mean, really, just the difference in the game is turnovers, let alone. And you look at it that first quarter, several of them for Louisville, multiple fumbles in that first quarter, in that first half. You had interceptions in the second half. they turn the ball over way too much on the road here. And that's courtesy of that Notre Dame defense. And that's really, they were playing from behind from the get go and having to try to build back despite these turnovers happening. And that's hard to do and go win on the road like that. So listen, I think that Louisville still is a very talented team. You just can't have you can't turn the ball over 3 times on the road against the top 15 team and expect to come out on top. I mean, pure and simple there. Now, I wouldn't say nothing big like that. Just avoid turnovers, and they still had a legitimate shot to win despite all those turnovers.
Completely agree. Yeah, just got to clean it up, make some better plays, and hold on to that football. Absolutely right. Then we have the Hogs versus Texas A&M in a 4-point thriller. Um, and I'll be honest, look, this is a tough game for the Razorbacks. I didn't watch too much of this game. I was busy watching the Notre Dame game. But Marcel Reed, look, the numbers aren't huge, but this guy seems to have really turned around this A&M team. And I think it's the right forward to move with him for the foreseeable future.
Can leave it to Arkansas to have another close loss to A&M. Leave it to them to do that again and literally make me want to die after the game. Um, but no, listen, the Arkansas offense is I'll just say this real quick about Arkansas, and then we can talk about obviously with A&M. But the Arkansas offense is just full of highs and lows lately. They'll show you the greatness with a 75-yard touchdown to start, and then they'll struggle just to get the most simple completions down the field going. And then you have some very odd special teams decisions. A fake field goal. I didn't get the fake field goal situation in the fourth quarter, or no, it was either late third quarter, early fourth quarter. I don't remember. But a fake field goal attempt that didn't work out. And I just I wasn't a fan of that. But what else am I used to as a Razorback fan? This is the 11th time in 12 years that A&M has beaten Arkansas. I feel like it's the 11th time in 12 years that they have beaten Arkansas by double digits or not by single digits. It's a single
Yeah.
digit game is what I meant to say. That they're beating them by single digits year in and year out, and it's just freaking ridiculous how it always comes down to the wire like this. I don't get how it could happen. Just constantly year and eventually there's eventually going to be like a blowout that happens, right? One side blows out the other. That does not happen here. It is a close game, no matter what the records are for either team, no matter how much you think one's better than the other. It always comes down to the wire. And Sam Pittman, as he usually does in close games in the SEC, doesn't get it done. And I got a stat to prove it for you, people. Under Sam Pittman, Arkansas is now 3-26 when trailing at any point in the fourth quarter. 3-26. The 3 wins: 2021 against Mississippi State, 2022 against Missouri State. Yeah, that's impressive right there. I tell you what, Missouri State. And then 2023 against Florida. That's the 3 times Arkansas has won when trailing in the fourth quarter. So they can't win these close games if they have to make a comeback in the fourth. And it's infuriating because they're going to be close in these games and they just can't get it done. But that's my Arkansas rant. Listen, I said it, everyone said it. Marcel Reed was the way better option. It makes this offense for A&M way more dynamic with him at quarterback and makes them tougher to beat. Look, they already have a solid defense. They just need to find consistency on offense. And if you want to tell me the best thing for their offense to be any sort of dynamic and go and beat a team like Missouri this weekend, Marcel Reed needs to be the starting quarterback. End of discussion.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's just kind of the way this team is built and the way this team looks right now. He really has kind of sparked the turnaround for this team. Let's carry it on to Illinois against Penn State. This was a whiteout game, and this was a great defensive showdown against two top 25 teams. What I was really surprised with was how well Illinois held their own in this game. And really, this game was decided by, the one thing Illinois had not done all year. It was a 14-7 game, playing it close. Illinois driving the field, getting ready to try and score even this game in in the fourth quarter. And Luke Altmaier throws his first interception of the season. Penn State would go down the field and score, and that basically did it for the Illini. So look, Penn State was tested. They were given a fight, but at the end of the game, the defense made big plays, and then the offense went down and put in another touchdown to put the game out of reach. So really impressive win by James Franklin and company to stay out of their own way, make the big plays in the fourth quarter, and win a huge ball game at home to set them up on a huge course for success this season.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we talked about the big games that'll be happening 2 weeks from now. You got UCLA this weekend at home. Then you're at USC, which will be is always going to be an interesting one, just right there with the two teams. You're at Wisconsin. We know that could be a trap. Like we said, you host Ohio State November 2nd, and USC and Ohio State are your last two ranked teams. After that, you got no other ranked teams on the schedule. You're setting yourself up for even if you go 1-1 in those games or maybe even if you go 0-2 in those games, you still have a shot at that final at-large spot in the college football playoff, or they make it all the way to the Big Ten championship. I really don't know at this point, but either
Yeah,
way, it's setting up really good for them to win these games that they're expected to win to give them a chance at the end of the season. So yeah, it's good for them. Illinois, their defense did good, like you said. The difference, Luke Altmaier had been so good about not turning it over, and that interception was the decider in that game.
absolutely. Then we had Kansas State really take it to Oklahoma State 42-20. This maybe was Ollie Gordon's best game of the season for Oklahoma State, but still doesn't hit 100 yards, still doesn't get in the end zone rushing the football. Really, this offense has been bottled up. It seems like they kind of built this team on the back of being able to run the football with Ollie Gordon. Alan Bowman just has not gotten the job done throwing the football. I'll be blatantly honest there. But we saw this Kansas State team come back from a brutal loss on the road, winning a big game at home by a big margin. Avery Johnson looks so good in this one. But the thing is, look, Kansas State, keep winning at home, keep winning at home. We know you can do it. But it's the road where we're really going to see how good of a team this is and if they deserve a college football playoff spot.
Yeah, I mean, like I said on the show last week, this was the game I felt the most confident in. This was the game I put the most money on that week last weekend because I felt so confident in Kansas State going in and handling business, and that's exactly what they did. You mentioned it. Listen, there's really nobody that, based on other games that happen, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. It's clear this Big 12 is still wide open for the taking for anybody who wants it, and like you mentioned, you keep on winning your home games, you're going to be fine. But getting a couple road wins, you take what their next two games are on the road. They get a bye week this week. You're at Colorado late at night on ESPN. You always know how that game is kind of tricky. For example, like we saw this past weekend. Then you're at West Virginia, which is a tough place to play. So, and then of course at Iowa State at the end of the year. So, yeah, those road games are truly going to be their big tests. I'm right there with you. But yeah, like I said, this Oklahoma State, I tell you, with Oklahoma State, it feels like if we have expectations with them, they don't live up to them. But if
Yeah.
they don't have expectations, we're like, wow, this team's really surprising us. Look how good they're doing. That's how it feels the last couple of years, at least with me, when it comes to Oklahoma State football.
Yeah. Then we take a look at Kentucky upsetting the number six team in the nation and Ole Miss. This was a big shocker. Missed field goal at the end really did it away. And when you look at the box score, when you look at this game, not bad numbers for Ole Miss. Looks like a game that they typically play. Over 250 yards for Jackson Dart, 170 something receiving yards for their top receiver. But it just came down to this team not finishing, it felt like. And that even came down to the final drive, getting into field goal range and not being able to finish by knocking in the field goal. And I do believe they had a penalty, right? A false start or something that pushed them back a little bit right before they kicked that field goal, play or two.
So,
That really ruined kind of this team. But it made the kick harder, absolutely. But look, this team, they just couldn't finish. Yeah, they had a no, actually, they had an offsides on the defense that moved them up.
I,
Uh,
I could have swore there was a penalty I was thinking of from that drive. It might have been from a drive before that in the fourth quarter. So I don't, but I know what you're talking about. They were driving down the field at a certain point, and then it seemed like everything was going good, and then a penalty happens that goes the other way. So
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, it was not that last drive. But yes, they just still couldn't finish this game, couldn't get the job done, and now they kind of sit shocked with the one loss. Look, that's not the end of the world for Ole Miss, but this team really wanted to compete for an SEC championship. They really want that first round bye. Look, they've been a team that in the last couple of years would have been in the 12-team playoff. They finished in the top 12 these last couple of years. So, look, it's not over for Ole Miss, but they are expecting better. They're expecting a step up, and having silly little mental lapses like this in a Kentucky game, that's the stuff that's not going to fly when you play against the big dogs in the college football playoff.
yeah, no, I mean, listen, this game you mentioned to me the Kentucky defense obviously is the storyline. Kentucky defense was incredible in this game. And I give their defense credit because they punted to them with like to Ole Miss with like 6 minutes left. And I was like, Ole Miss could really just run the clock out, handle this, they'll be fine. They force the 3-and-out, and then Kentucky goes on a really good drive late in the game. Something we didn't see against Georgia. They go down and score, and then obviously force the missed field goal. But yeah, I mean, we had said it all season. We had said through these first 4 weeks, we had said, Ole Miss, yeah, it's good. They have yet to play anybody. They have
Yeah,
yet to play any talented teams. What's going to happen when they face one like Kentucky in the SEC? There's your answer for what happened. That is the kind of thing that will happen, and that's what cost them. And now you're at South. You got 3 straight tough games at South Carolina. They're a good defensive unit, especially if, and they'll be even tougher if Sellers is back at quarterback for them. Then you're at LSU, at night in Baton Rouge. That just sounds like a trouble there. Then you host Oklahoma, which we know how good their defense is. So that's 3 straight tough games of facing an elite defense. Not to mention, you still got to travel to Fayetteville, which seems to be a kryptonite for Lane Kiffin at points. And then you
yeah,
still got to host Georgia. So the question with me is their O line has had some issues against Kentucky there. What happens when they play some tougher defenses or even equal to toughness of that Kentucky defense? That could hurt them down the line in these games.
absolutely. And you can't lose many more steps now, especially with that one loss being to unranked Kentucky. But then we had the game of the weekend. Let's talk about it. Number 2, Georgia heads into Tuscaloosa to take on number 4, Alabama, but they fall 34-41. And look, this was a snoozer in the first half. I wasn't watching it. Alabama ran away with this game. I was like, look, I'm not going to waste my time. Look, it's good to see, that, sometimes Georgia is going to fall and lose. They look human for once in the last few years. I know they lost the SEC championship. It didn't go to the college football playoff last year, but that was one loss in the last almost 4 years. It felt like. So for this team to lose here, I was like, whatever. They're losing, so be it. Good for college football. But I'm not going to sit here and watch Alabama's backups come in the game and just have themselves a field day. And in the second half, Georgia really started to march back. Look, Carson Beck had made some big mistakes in the first half. He seemed to recover from those, come back, come back, come back. And then they go up and they take the lead on a massive, massive touchdown play. And fortunately, as they start coming back, I'm like, okay, I'm throwing this game back on because Kirby Smart's a great coach. This is a great defense. If the momentum's rolling, they may have Alabama kind of stunned here. They might be able to take this game over and win. I was like, I got to see the end of this game. They go down, huge touchdown. I'm like, well, that's got to be the death knell. I know we're in Tuscaloosa, but it's silent. They're losing after being up by so much. The fans are actually crying. There were girls crying in the stands that I saw. I was like, man, this has been a tonal shift for Alabama. This has got to be a gut punch. Look, and I know it's an overplayed, saying here in sports when you see a guy so young to point out his age and how successful he is. But 17-year-old Ryan Williams goes out and makes a phenomenal reception, takes it all the way down the field to put his team back on top in one play. Look, Jalen Milroe, I loved him. I thought he was fantastic. But I think to me, the story of this game was Ryan Williams and the way he executed against one of the best defenses in the country. And he's not even a legal adult yet. Just fantastic work by him. And much like Jason Tatum, he's only 17 years old.
Yeah, I know. 17 years old. I had never heard that before.
Yeah.
It's a new thing you learn. I want my analogy, so I said it whenever it leans in the intro, but I said word for word on here, similar to the Oregon Washington game last year. If I could date this game, I would. And that has worked out 2 years in a row. I want that to be known. Each time I said that, we got a thrilling finish in those games. I just want to point that out. But my perfect analogy for this, based on that, if I could date this game, I would, is like the date immediately starts really bad. You say something and it's just awkward for half of the day. Things aren't going well right now. But then you slowly start digging yourself out of the hole. And by the end of the night, it's a really great date. You know what?
Yep.
That's the analogy you roll with on that. I think is if you're going off my if I could date this game, I would. It got better as the night went along. Um, but listen, obviously Georgia made their mistakes in the first half on offense. Carson Beck, it looked like you said in our message, it looked like the Monstars came in and just snatched his
Yes.
talent in the first half of this game. I mean, what was happening? And then, like I said, I stayed through with this game throughout just because I was like, it's a blowout, but I don't know how many more top five matchups are we going to get this year officially. And you could just see Georgia just slowly crawling back, slowly getting a touchdown here, getting a stop here, going down scoring. And I'm saying like, okay, they're going to make this closer than what it is. Good for Georgia. This is good fight in the second half. And, this is from someone who not only picked Bama to win the game, had Bama money line, sweating that Georgia touchdown. I think I sat with my jaw dropped for like 5 minutes after Georgia scored that touchdown to take the lead. I mean, I couldn't believe it. And like you said, there were Bama fans crying. They were all over the place, just stunned. I kind of wish they would have shown Nick Saban's face to see what he would have done. I'm kind
Yeah.
of disappointed they didn't do it. But you mentioned it in one play. I'm one play down the field. Ryan Williams, the 17-year-old,
17-year-old.
goes down, makes the great catch, and then makes probably one of the greatest juke moves I have ever seen to this point. That he made the Georgia players run into each other on it. It was an incredible play. It was electric. And then, of course, after that happened, I was like, there's still 2 minutes or something left in this game. How many more touchdowns are we going to get in these final 2 minutes? But the Bama defense got the stop at the end and got the win. And now they're number one in the country. That's good for them. But I will say the fight from Georgia in this game was incredible. I was impressed with how they came back because you've seen it against people when they play Bama or they play against Georgia in these big ranked matchups. If they get down early, it's just over. There's no point of sticking around. And this was a great heavyweight match between these two. It was fun. And, listen, I'm just saying I would not mind seeing this happen again later in the season in Atlanta. That's all I'm going to say. I wouldn't mind that at all.
That's fair if it's going to be anything like that first matchup. But then we had another top 26 matchup between Boise State and Washington State. And look, this was, for all intents and purposes, a college football playoff eliminator. Both of these teams need every possible game to get themselves into that final little extra bid at the number 12 spot. And this was going to be probably the best game on Washington State's schedule. It helped that Boise State was ranked coming into this game. But Boise State comes out, and Ashton Genty had a field day, ran all over the place. A 21-point victory for the Broncos, who look well on their way to a potential college football playoff berth.
Yeah, let's just say it like it is. And I know there's all the stuff about Travis Hunter, who I think is very worthy of the Heisman and one of the best players in the country. You cannot look me dead in the eye and tell me there is a better player in college football right now so far this year than what Ashton Genty has done. I mean, man's almost cracked 1,000 yards already through 4 games, 13 touchdowns. I did see someone say they're like, is this what it was like to watch Barry Sanders in college football. And that's probably the most accurate representation I've seen. I mean, just carrying the team on his back, huge play after huge play in this game. It was phenomenal. It was so much fun to watch because I feel like a lot of people, because this game kicked off at like 9 o'clock, I think 9:30 ish. And so many people I saw were like, I'm staying up solely to watch Ashton Genty, not to watch Boise State and Washington State, to watch Ashton Genty dominate. And that's exactly what he did. It was incredible to see. I'm glad I get to see it week in and week out. And like you mentioned, and like we said in the games against Oregon and early in the season, the competition is only going to slowly decline as we go further along in the conference play. Washington State was the last tough one, I would say, until they play UNLV, which that will be a massive showdown on a Friday night, nonetheless. So that's going to be incredible. But Ashton Genty, if I have to give my top three for the Heisman right now, it's Ashton Genty one, Travis Hunter two, and I know there's some question about it, but in my opinion, Jalen Milroe number three. That's my top three for the Heisman right now. Ashton Genty, clear number one, dominating college football. You love to see it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. Then we spin it to our last big moment of the weekend, and that's Arizona upsetting number 10 Utah 23-10. And look, earlier this season, we saw this Arizona team get walloped by Kansas State. And we wondered, we thought Arizona was going to be good coming into this season. They had a surprising season last year. Thought they were going to begin contender in the Big 12, but it looked like maybe they were going to slip into this mid tier of the Big 12 where they weren't going to compete with the big dogs. And Utah had looked relatively untouchable so far this season, but now they're stunned by Arizona. Arizona shows, hey, we've just got the one loss. We're still well in this conference. We're still well on our way to doing something big this year. And now Utah, look, now they're also down to one loss. They've had a little bit of a reality check for them that it's not going to be a cakewalk, and that's a former Pac-12 opponent they played in this one. So it's not going to be easy here. You got to come out and you got to play your best football week in and week out. I think, like you said, we saw a lot of stuff that shows us how wide open this Big 12 really still is.
Yeah, this Big 12 is the thing I'm looking forward to watching the rest of this college football season. I know there's plenty of big matchups we're going to see down the line and everything, but I'm going to be keeping my eyes glued to any significant Big 12 matchup. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if we were planning on mentioning it, but Colorado quietly 4-1, quietly 4-1, and they dominated UCF in a game they were a double-digit underdog, beat Baylor. If no one wants to take that Big 12 crown, there's plenty for the taking, and Arizona was one of them. And, listen, it's just the same thing with Utah. The defense was phenomenal most of that game, but the offense without Cam Rising is just not good. It's terrible, and it's crazy that one guy could carry an offense this much, but he's done that. And no offense to Zach Wilson's brother, he made a big throw in the fourth quarter to get them a chance, but he's just not on that same tier as Cam Rising. That's what hurt him here. But also Noah Fafita, that late fourth quarter, he made two of the most insane throws I've seen of this college football season. One, I forget, it was like a 50, 60-yard throw down the field where he took a shot at his legs, like low legs, that I thought he suffered a severe injury. And I was going to be extremely furious that he got injured for it. And then he makes a phenomenal throw, scrambling to his right and throwing into the back of the end zone to give him the lead for good. And it was incredible. It was incredible. And this is stuff we had seen from Noah Fafita last year. And, hopefully we're going to get used to seeing more of that this year. But yeah, this Big 12, as wide open as any conference in college football, I cannot wait to see what this comes down to at the very end. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to watching some Big 12 and seeing what happens in this conference the rest of the year.
Yeah, it is going to be something different. But let's take a look at this top 25 poll. At number one, moving up all the way from four, this is the Alabama Crimson Tide. And then at number two, we've got Texas sliding down one spot. Ohio State stays firm at three. Tennessee moves up a spot to four, and Georgia drops all the way down to number five. And when I look at this, look, I think these are still the top five teams in the country. I think it's fair to keep them all here. But I absolutely like moving Alabama up over Texas. It's nothing against Texas. They've played a really good football this year. But when you go out and you beat the number two team in the nation and you're number four, you have proven that you're the number one team in the nation.
No, no complaint from me. I was gonna honestly, Georgia, and I know this is crazy to say, I thought Georgia dropped more than I was expecting. I was honestly expecting them to be number three or number four, maybe, or maybe even closer to that top three. Because keep in mind, even though they were getting blown out, they were dominant in that second half. And I was like, these two teams going head to head like this, I kind of thought they would give Georgia a little bit of credit and keep them up even higher. But still, dropping down to five, nothing to worry about. But what's crazy, Austin, if this stuff holds until October 19th, we're going to have not one, but two top five matchups on the same Saturday. It is going to be incredible if they can both stay in the top five and avoid any type of slip ups that could occur.
Yeah, we'll see how well that works out for them, though. College football doesn't tend to like to play fair.
No, it does not.
Then starting with number six, we've got the Oregon Ducks, who have really basically worked their way up to a spot right outside the top five, kind of very close to where they started in the preseason polls. But now that they're starting to get some momentum and start to play super well and play good football, they're getting back on the right path and back on the right track here as far as the AP poll is concerned. At number seven, we've got Penn State. Look, that was a big win against Illinois. Needed this move. Eight, you've got Miami moving down a spot. Missouri works its way back into the top 10, as well as Michigan joining in at the number 10 spot. Look, I like this ranking. I like getting Missouri back in. I like Miami moving down a spot, saying, hey, we saw what happened on Friday night. Win doesn't fool us. Everybody watched and everybody saw what happened in that game. And Michigan, I think relatively surprising to me that they've been able to kind of rise back up. Look, I thought this team was going to be, I didn't think they were going to be bad, but I didn't think they'd be a top 10 team at this point in the season this year, especially with the way they lost to Texas.
Yeah, I mean, if in all honesty, if you want my honest opinion here, um, they are the most fraudulent top 10 team of the season so far, if in my entire opinion. They don't have a quarterback. They don't have a passing game. Call me crazy, but I think in order to be a top 10 team, unless your name is Army or Navy and you run the triple option, you got to have a competent quarterback to be able to have that success. Now, I could be wrong. If Khalil Mullings keeps on running the football like this, if that defense keeps on playing well, then absolutely they could deserve a chance. But this is a team that I saw after the Texas game. I was like 9-3 at best, maybe 9-2 entering that game against Ohio State. But I mean, as far as the rest of the top, that six, Oregon, I think them moving up will be good. We're going to see a test with them against Ohio State here very, very soon. Penn State moving up. I thought that's respected with getting a win against a ranked opponent. Miami dropping down one spot. You won, but don't act like this was an easy win for you. We saw how this game played out, and really, you were down double digits in the fourth quarter, and really could have, and maybe depending on what side you're on, should have lost this game. And Missouri, listen, I don't want to say they're fraudulent, but I just haven't looked at them and said I'm impressed by what Missouri's done this year. That's not unlike them. I think they actually have a competent quarterback and competent players all around. I just haven't been impressed with anything that they have done this year to this point. And like I already said with Michigan.
Then number 11, we've got the USC Trojans. Um, they had a good win this past weekend against Wisconsin. Way to come back and win, especially after the loss to Michigan the week before. Ole Miss at 12, dropping down 6 spots with that loss to Kentucky. LSU up 1-13. Notre Dame up 2-14. Clemson up 2-15. Look, when you look at this, these next five, Ole Miss dropped a lot. I think 12 is fair. I thought the AP poll would be a little bit nicer to them though. Just being a 3-point loss. And the missed field goal, really, they were right in there. It's not like they got walked off field goal on. They basically put themselves in the spot to tie this game and go to overtime, and they didn't do it. I like moving them outside of the top 10, but I thought the committee or the voters might be a little bit more generous.
And I'm glad they weren't. And listen, I think they put them right in that spot with LSU because, like we said, 2 weeks from now they play LSU, and that could really decide where they're both going to rank at that point. And that'll be a big one for both of them because they'll both be at one loss. And like we say, the two losses is basically you're on the edge. You're basically you can't lose anymore at that point. So that'll be interesting to see. USC, listen, they're number 11. They won this week against Wisconsin. I'm not saying it'll happen. Keep an eye on it. They're at Minnesota this weekend. That screams trap game, and the way Minnesota plays, similar to Michigan. I don't know. I think USC will probably win, but I would not be surprised if Minnesota keeps that game really close. And then listen, LSU's just slowly climbing up after the loss to USC, and then 14 and 15 Notre Dame and Clemson, two teams again who have lost to a game already. They really don't have much room for error. And they're both, like we said with Clemson, still slowly climbing up. And right now, it seems like in the ACC, it's Miami and Clemson right now. It's just, is anyone else going to try to take advantage of it and make that a different matchup in the ACC? But that's at least where it looks like it's going currently.
Yeah. So then at 16, we've got Iowa State. At 17, we've got BYU. 18, you've got Utah. 19, you've got Oklahoma. And 20, you've got Kansas State. Man, when I look at this and I see Utah dropping 8 spots, I think maybe this is a bit of an overreaction. Um, I think you probably could have put them at like 16 or 17. Um, but I think dropping 8 spots is just, I don't know, for me, maybe I'm just overreacting, but I think it's a little too much. Ole Miss to Kentucky is one thing, but one loss, Arizona, a team a lot of people thought were going to be good, who looked good in that game. Uh, and with the Big 12 looking the way it does, I don't think this is such a huge loss that it should propel Utah out of being in, a hypothetical playoff if the season ended today.
Listen, obviously with Utah, the good news for them, they got plenty of good games on their schedule that they can get them back up into that top spot. Also, good news for them. They got a bye week this week. So maybe Cam Rising continues to get healthy. He maybe returns at some point. I feel like I've said this before, Austin. I
Yeah.
can't quite put my finger on when I've said this before. It's almost like we said this all of last season, pretty much. But listen, Iowa State 16. I'm loving this for Iowa State. I'm loving this for them. They were a team I considered a dark horse to win the Big 12 in the preseason. And I talked myself at if you listen to the season preview, I said that I had picked like 6 different teams for the Big 12 title game. And I went with the most boring conservative one, in my opinion. And I'm mad at myself that I wasn't a little bit more gutsy with my picks. But Iowa State's really good. BYU, I would just put my hand up. I did not have 5-0 BYU on my bingo card for this college football season. I
Nope.
believe I only had them winning 3, 4 games this year total.
Wow.
So, um, but they're playing great football. And like I said, if no one else wants this Big 12, them and Iowa State could continue their reign and have it for the taking. And then honestly, Oklahoma 19, a great comeback win at Auburn. I don't know how Auburn lost that game in all honesty, but I still found it funny they did. And then Kansas State, similar to that, just slowly climbing back up into the rankings. Yeah, that's my thoughts 15 through 20.
Then at 21, you've got Boise State rising up 4 spots. Really like to see that. Louisville dropping down 7 to number 22. Indiana entering the ranks at number 23. Illinois dropping down to 24. And then you've got UNLV joining the rankings at 25, tied with Texas A&M also at 25. My big thing here is I know you want to get UNLV ranked because they certainly deserve it. Um, but I don't like. A&M falling a spot with a win. I think personally, probably, I don't like this tie at 25, especially being that A&M was 24 last week and they won their game. I know it wasn't the most convincing, but if you're really having this toss up here at 24 and 25, I'd probably just have a Notre Dame, or not Notre Dame. I'd probably have Illinois just fall out of the top 25. I know they have two wins against ranked opponents, and that's probably what's keeping them around. But both of those opponents immediately fell out of the top 25 and have not re-entered the top 25. Um, and I'm a Notre Dame, or I'm an Illinois guy, so I probably would have done that and kept A&M maybe at 24. But you know what? 26 teams in your top 25, I won't complain too much.
Yeah, not bad for the top 26. I'm just happy, as I said, for Indiana, as you saw in my reaction there. Kirk Signetti, I mean, he let us know, like I said, I win, Google me, and they're 5-0 for the first time in what, 57 years? Is that how long it's been?
It's probably been a
Something like
while.
that. I mean, so give the guy a ton of credit for the immediate turnaround and really backing up his talk to this point in the season. So I'm gonna give him credit. Now, granted, their schedule gets really tough in obviously the next couple of weeks. The next like 4 or 5 games will be extremely tough for them. But I'm happy they're in the rankings. I'm happy UNLV is. And really, this is setting up Austin. Like I said, that UNLV Boise State matchup on a Friday night in a couple of weeks might be what determines who that 12 seed is in the college football playoffs. So that's great. And for the argument, I'd probably say the same. I feel like A&M didn't deserve to drop with their win. If anyone, I think Illinois dropping out and falling to 26 would have made sense there. But yeah, that's what I would say there. I'm happy for Indiana and UNLV to enter the rankings here, so I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, that was fun to see some new teams, some new faces, especially faces we don't see very often in that top 25. But let's take a look at our teams and players of the week. Um, I'll start with my teams of the week here. At number 5, I went with Kentucky. I like the win over a top 10 team. But there are some other teams that I had to go out and give some love to here. At number 4, I went with Rutgers. This team has been on an unbelievable start, playing super good football. Hard not to pay attention to what's going on in New Jersey right now, as they look to maybe rival some of these other teams in the Big Ten. Team that we've just kind of not talked about at all in the Big Ten. And I don't know if they're a real contender out there, but they're there. They're undefeated. Um, Time to maybe start talking about Rutgers a little bit. Then at number 3, I have the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. This was a really good game to come through and get a big win against a ranked opponent and keep that momentum turning forwards. At number 2, I went with Penn State. This was a home game, but this is definitely one of those games that James Franklin finds that the James Franklin Penn State teams have just found ways to lose. They're favored in this game. It's at home. It's the whiteout. Everything's in their favor for a win. And, usually they just don't get it done. It's good to see that this team looks better and can get the job done, especially in the big moment. And at number 1, I went with probably to me, the no-brainer pick this week, and that's Alabama. Played in a phenomenal back and forth game with the number 2 team in the country and came out on top. Who you got in your players or your teams of the week?
Yeah, so my top five is a little bit different. Number five, I wanted to give Colorado some love here. I know this is some questionable to some people that maybe listen, but listen, on the road and as a 14-point dog, they went out and dominated UCF in this game. And like I said, if no one else is taking that lead in the Big 12, they have some games down the line that if they want it, they could have it. I don't know if they will, but they could have it. Number 4, had to get a shout out to the Duke Blue Devils here. 5-0 on the year, and I don't think anyone has mentioned them or mentioned what they did this weekend. Fell behind 20-0 to North Carolina and came back to win that game 21-20. Big shout out to Manny Diaz in his first year as the head coach there at Duke, taking over for Mike Elko. So he's done a great job. Had to show him love. Arizona, my number 3 team. Going into Utah, I know the offense is terrible, But we talk about it going into Utah and winning games there. It is so tough for any team to do. And going out and they won that game by double digits, had to give them love. Number two, Alabama here. Listen, I know people think they should be number one. And clearly, like we're going to talk about, I'm sure some people thought they should be number one. Um, but I had to give love to the team that's number one, and that's Kentucky. Just going on the road in the SEC against the top six opponent and really controlling that football game, I had to put them at number one. I know there's arguments for Bama winning that big game, but I had to put Kentucky at number one, getting a huge win like that. So that's my top five teams of the week in Austin. I'm not going to lie to you. Based on what I saw from Instagram, I feel like this one might be kind of easy.
Yeah, well, let's just take it to social media and look. Bama, clean sweep across the board. Alabama wins the social media, and you know what that means. When you dominate social media like that, you win the overall bid, especially when somebody gives you a number one nod, you get a number two nod. Alabama's our team of the week. So let's go into our player of the weeks now. At number five, I went with Noah Thomas from Texas A&M, over 100 and something yards receiving. Had a great game, had a touchdown against the Razorbacks. Had to give some love, some wide receiver love. In a week where I felt like wide receivers deserved a little bit of extra attention. At number four, I went with Haj Malik Williams. I hope I'm saying that right. From UNLV. Look, we talked about a lot of drama stirring up in Las Vegas with the Rebels and with their former starting quarterback. And so all eyes were on how well this guy was going to play. And there were even some people saying he might be better than the starting quarterback. We're going to come out and see, though. He went out and he played out of his mind. 180 something passing yards, two touchdowns, 119 yards on the ground, and another rushing touchdown. He really dominated and showed what he's made of. Really exciting to see this UNLV team really execute at a high level. Um, at number three, I had Avery Johnson from Kansas State. And I was a little thrown off whether to put him in here or not. He had a turnover that, and I don't like to put guys with turnovers usually because I like to give love to the people who play the clean games and still find a way to put up the big numbers. But I just couldn't deny the three passing touchdowns, the huge yardage, the two rushing touchdowns from Avery Johnson. He really went out there and made a big statement after this team fell flat on their face the week before. And then at number two, I went with Ryan Williams from Alabama. Look, I'm not going to go into a crazy amount of detail. We talked a lot about what he did this past weekend. And if you didn't know, he's only 17 years old. But he's really played a phenomenal game, and he deserves a big tip of the cap. And at number one, I went with Ashton Jeanty. Obviously, this guy dominated on the ground. He's the best player in college football. And when he has big weeks like this, he's going to be the number one player. You can just go ahead and assume that.
Yeah. So for my top five, some similarities. Difference is number one. You know me. I try to find one defensive player a week. It just keeps on happening to be Oklahoma defensive players. I don't know why. It just keeps on happening like that. But Kip Lewis from Oklahoma had a huge pick six in their comeback win against Auburn. Was a big one in the fourth quarter to help them take the lead. Everyone was kind of shocked by it there. So it was really good to get him. I had to give him some love. Number four, Ryan Williams. I know people are like, at number four, are you insane? Yes. But listen, he was incredible. He was really good in this game. And like I said, we don't need to mention anymore. He's 17 years old. I know it's crazy. Number three, like you said, Haj Malik Williams. Listen, all the drama that we talked about last week, how were they going to perform in this game? As my Alexa randomly just went off in my house. That just scared me half to death. I don't even know what just happened there. I said, I'm not sure what you mean by that. I didn't even say anything close to Alexa. Okay. Um, Back to my point I was trying to make. Haj Malik Williams was really good in this game. He dominated against Fresno State and really put the naysayers to bed after the whole drama from this past week. Number two, I had to show love to Jalen Milroe. He was absolutely incredible in this game. And yeah, he deserved love for this. So, yeah, he absolutely deserved credit for his performance in this game in the big stage. And I know people uh, when it are like, hey, he went out there but Ryan Williams carried him. But you saw what he was able to do on the ground, and he did a great job in this game to me. And the number one, Ashton Genty, like you said, and like we have said, he's the best player in college football, and he went out and dominated once again. I'm telling you, he keeps on entering these lists, Austin. He's already in the contention, and I mean, clear favorite early on for bold take, the Michael Penix bold take player of the year. I mean, he's got to be the clear favorite there. So, yeah, for sure, he is number one on my list. And I am offended if anyone didn't vote him this week.
Well, fair to be super mega offended because Ryan Williams dominated our polls just like Alabama did. It's the first time it's happened this year, but it was absolutely inevitable. We have our player and a team matching up, but in such a phenomenal weekend, in such a phenomenal game, you knew this was probably going to be the outcome here.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong there. I mean, I will say I'm impressed it lasted this long without us having something like this happening.
We had
So
a generational run to start the season.
we did indeed. But I'd say all good things got to come to an end at some point. So, but congrats to Ryan Williams and Alabama. It's very much deserved. Not trying to discredit them in any way. It's very much deserved.
Yeah, he was phenomenal this weekend. He's only 17 years old. Um, uh, man, don't you miss?
Drinking game for people watching this. Every time you see the net, you hear us say that he's 17 years old. You got to take a drink every single time. There's you a game you
Yeah,
could play this.
try it. That's like watching Jason Tatum is like first 4 years in the league. He's only 22 years old. It's like no kidding. You only said it 100 times. He was 21 last year, so we get
And he
it.
was 20 the year before that.
Yeah, and he was 18 before that. But let's get into some of these game previews for the upcoming week. And I want to start with Syracuse versus UNLV. And, Syracuse one loss on the season. And even though it's not the biggest test for UNLV, look, they've done a good job scheduling Power Four opponents to play games. And that's one thing that I don't think a lot of people are talking about. They've played Power Four games, they've won their games, and that is something that when this committee meets at the end of the year and they look at this team, they'll say, "Hey, look at this team. They went out, they played a lot of Power Four teams, they won a lot of games, and so that shows us that hey, this is going to be a tournament made up of mostly Power Four teams. So we want the team that's going to perform the best against these guys and give us the most exciting games. So this is absolutely the right mindset by UNLV to really schedule some big games against Power Four opponents to prove themselves. This is going to be another opportunity to add another resume builder. What are your thoughts on this matchup coming up?
We'll say of all the Power Four opponents they played so far, this will probably be the toughest one they have played to date.
Agree.
So I think it'll be a great game between the two. I'm wondering if this run for UNLV continues. There's a part of me that thinks, after all the drama last week and they went out and dominated against Fresno State, I'm wondering, did they use all that momentum in that one game? I'm wondering if there's that, because don't get me wrong, Syracuse, as you all know, I am a well-known Kyle McCord hater on here and on other shows. But he can throw, but he's been throwing the football well, and this is a talented Syracuse rosters we've seen up to this point. So I think this will be the best game of the Friday night games. A lot of them to choose from this week, which is great to see. Um, and that's just a great thing to see in general, Austin. We're getting to the point of a lot of weekday games. Hey, just saying, starting today, 55 straight days of football, NFL or college, 55 straight days. We got the Tuesday and Wednesday night football games that are back. You'll love to see it. So, um, but this is going to be a fun test for UNLV. I'm loving it's at UNLV because they've proven to go on the road and handle business against other ones. Now they have a Power Four team coming to their home. How are they going to respond with that?
Absolutely. Then we've got Tennessee versus Arkansas. And look, this is going to be the Arkansas Razorbacks' opportunity to maybe shock the world in Fayetteville. But the Volunteers are looking to add another SEC win and show that what they can do on the road with their freshman quarterback.
I'm still just triggered that Arkansas lost that game, and College Game Day didn't end up going there, so I'm just insanely triggered about that. Still, it's hard for me to talk about to this point. But still, nonetheless, I mean, this screams trap game. This screams trap game for Tennessee. Late 6:30 on ABC. Kirk Herbstreit, Chris Fowler, and them are going to be there in Fayetteville at night. It's going to be a big crowd, even with that loss. It's going to be a big environment. How will this Tennessee team respond? We know they're a really good team, but now can they be the elite that go on the road and handle these trap games well? That's going to be something I'm going to look forward to see, and what Nico is going to be able to do in this really tough environment. Because I know Oklahoma playing there was tough, but in Fayetteville on a Saturday night like this, with as good of a team coming in as we've seen in a while, this is going to be a big test for him. And I'm thinking this will be a close game, and it just screams trap game.
Yeah, if it wasn't Arkansas this year, I would say this screams trap game. But that's even the definition of a trap game. Somebody you just completely do not expect to come out and stun you. You go sleeping on them. So just maybe our Razorbacks will have it in them. I surely hope so. That'd make for an entertaining night of football. Um, then we've got Ole Miss versus South Carolina. And look, Ole Miss with the loss last week, they're looking for a bounce back in SEC play. And South Carolina kind of looking to prove themselves. Look, I think this has been a pretty decent team this year. Do we know if Sellers is going to be back this week? Is there a chance he'll be back this week at all?
I think there's a chance he plays this week. I don't know how severe or like how legit that is, but I have heard that they expect him to play. I know he's practiced this week, so all signs point to him being able to play. Um, so I would say you maybe see kind of like the LSU game. You see a little bit of him, you see a little bit of Robbie Ashford. I could maybe see a combination of both of them.
Yeah, but they're looking to kind of get back on track. They look probably not going to be a team that's competing for a college football playoff spot this year. But they're building something there, and they had some momentum going, trying to restore that momentum, and get a big win against a number 12 Ole Miss team that's on the ropes after last week. It would certainly be a big opportunity for them. Then
And
we've got oh
similar to what I said about the Arkansas game, this screams trap game as well for it,
yes,
especially after that. And like I said, this South Carolina defensive line and this defense in general is really underrated, I think. And they're going against an Ole Miss offense that kind of struggled against Kentucky last week, and a defense that South Carolina went out and scored 31 on the road nonetheless. So this is another one you're going to want to keep your eye on. And again, this is what we talked about. This is the kind of weekend you look at it as like, oh, there's no big ranked matchups. You're like, keep an eye on these ones. We could have some fun stuff happening, and this is definitely one of those games.
absolutely. I completely forgot to let you speak there and almost ran right on into our next game. So I'm glad you butted in and said it because as soon as you started talking, I was like, yeah, I didn't even let him say a bit about this game. But then we've got a rematch of last year's national championship game, Michigan versus Washington. And while the stakes aren't nearly as high as last time they met, and the teams aren't nearly as good as the last time they met, Michigan's in the top 10. And Washington, look, doesn't matter who you are. This team would like to get a win against Michigan after the way things ended the last time they met. A national championship was on the line and they lost. And look, even more stuff's come out about the cheating and so on and so forth. And you think, look, I know it's not a lot of the same guys still there at Washington, but do you think these guys don't want to come out there and punch this team in the mouth after everything that's transpired over the last year?
Yeah.
So look, I don't know if Washington's going to come out and win, but look, I wouldn't call this one a trap game. I'd call this a very realistic opportunity to lose this game.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, Washington's favored in this game. And really, if you look at their game they played against Rutgers last Friday, they dominated that game. They just didn't end up winning. I mean, they outgained them everywhere in that game, and they flat out should have won against Rutgers, but they didn't. But now you mentioned it, big home game against Michigan, and like I said, the teams are not even close to the same. There's hardly anybody from either team that played in that national championship game still there, let alone the coaches that coached in that national championship game. But listen, if there's any sort of top 10 matchup or top 10 team that Washington can beat this year, this is this team. Like I said, they really don't have a passing game. They're one dimensional. You shut down that Michigan run game, you're going to have a legitimate chance. And if we were picking this game, I would probably favor the Huskies in this game. So with it being at home, and I question about Michigan about what we're going to expect from their passing game. If Michigan can pass the ball, they can win this game. But until I see something different, I'm not going to have faith in their passing game at all.
Agreed. And then our final little game preview here, Clemson versus Florida State. Look, this was earlier in the season. This was pegged as, at the beginning of the year, the matchup in the ACC. Who's going to get the first leg up? Assuming these teams might have a chance to meet in the ACC championship, who's going to get the leg up on the other? Who's going to get the head start on making their way to the ACC championship in the college football playoff? And now we've got a Florida State team that's finally won a football game, matching up against a Clemson team that's really found its groove. We're going to say it one more time. This is definitely a trap game. I think Clemson should win this game. Absolutely, no doubt in my mind. But we keep hearing about the freak athletes that are on this Florida State team. And DJ Uiagalelei, look, I'm waving it all off. I don't care what anybody else says. He's a good player. He hasn't had a good season at Florida State, but it's not all his fault.
No, it
Uh,
is not all his fault at all. It's just a collective of many things that have gone wrong for them. And he's not even playing in this game. I don't know if you've heard, I believe it's broken fingers or something. He's out, and it's
wow.
Brock Glenn who's going to start. Fun
Oh,
fact,
no.
was the man who started the ACC championship game last year for them when they were literally running the Wildcat the whole time.
Get ready
So
for that.
it's
Yeah.
going to be it's if Clemson loses this game, if Clemson doesn't cover the spread, this is an embarrassment.
Yeah.
This is an embarrassment if they don't go out and win this game by 20 or more points. I think that's all that needs to be said there with all that's gone on in this and everyone talking about, well, Clemson's looking better week in and week out. They don't win this game by 20 plus. There needs to be conversations about why did you not win this game by 20 plus?
Yeah. But let's go into our game picks. And look, I struggled to find games that I really wanted to pick this week. Look, I'm gonna watch college football. I love watching college football, and like you said, it doesn't on paper it doesn't have the big game pick matchups. The marquee names facing off in a big clash, but it's going to be a chance where we really see how these teams handle coming into a situation where you're expected to win. That's really a test of a good team, winning the games you're supposed to win. We talk about Penn State the last couple of years. They're the big prominent example. A team we pick time and time again in the preseason to be a contender in the Big Ten, to be a contender for a national championship. And they always find a way to lose the games that they're supposed to win. And so, look, while it may be a boring week for the casual fan, for the fans who are here and ready to figure out who our real deal teams are, you're going to find out this weekend because the guys that win the games they're supposed to and they win the easy ones, those are the teams that are contenders. And I know that sounds basic and it doesn't sound like, oh, well, of course, if you win the games you're supposed to win, but not everybody does. That's the wonder in college football is that you don't always win the game you're supposed to win. Only the best of the best can do it. Sorry, ESPN just decided to start playing a notification there. I don't know if you just caught that glimpse of that. Um, but uh, so it really is a tough weekend for game picks. So I only have two game picks for us this weekend. And the find in the second one was a struggle. Look, we've got a great matchup between A&M and Missouri. Look, this is a battle of the teams who left the Big 12 to come to the SEC before it was cool. They really, if you want to put it like this, really everybody else doing conference realignment is riding these two teams' coattails. Um, they did it first. They made it cool. Now in the SEC, battling down in the rankings, Missouri, like you said, hasn't had the super hyped season start that they wanted, and now still in the top 10, just got back in, chance to prove themselves against a Texas A&M team that's finding their footing and wanting to prove the team that they were supposed to be this year.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be. Listen, I'm just going to be honest with you. This game screams an A&M upset. It's begging for an A&M upset on the road at Kyle Field, 11 a.m. on ABC. A&M's favored in this game. I mean, everything's saying this is going to be an A&M upset. It's going to happen. Book it, guarantee it. And listen, I'll just take the bait on this. I think especially if Marcel Reed plays for A&M, I think they can win this game. So if he plays, and I'm going to assume he plays, I'm going to take A&M in the upset. I know I'm falling for the basic pick here, and it seems so obvious. That's why, and I'm falling for it. But I really think it's going to happen this weekend.
I'm going to go against you here. I'm going to go with Missouri. As we all know, this is the Missouri Tigers fan podcast. And so I can't go against the home team. But look, you're right. This does have all the makings of an upset for A&M. But I think that Missouri is hopefully, finally, going to get it together this weekend and play their best football. I think it's going to be a phenomenal football game, super close football game. But I think the experience of Brady Quinn will edge out the inexperience of Marcel Reed, still trying to figure himself out.
Brady Quinn. I swear you
Brady
just said
Quinn.
Brady Quinn.
I may have said
I
Brady Quinn, but I meant Brady Cook. Um,
I was like, my good. Did we go back in time to 2007? What just happened here?
I think if Brady Quinn was playing for Missouri, they would definitely win this game. Um, but that's my pick. Brady Cook. I think his experience will outweigh the inexperience of Marcel Reed at the end of this close game. And then our other game pick, basically what landed me on this one was that college game days going. So Miami versus Cal. Who you got?
Once again, hey, similar to what I said about a 17-year-old, you might as well have the trap game thing. I mean, here's Miami again. I
Yeah.
mean, all the way across the country for a conference game. And this is, again, college game days there. Everything's setting up for the upset to happen. But I mean, I tell you what, this, as I will officially say, is a Miami Hurricane podcast, as you all know well. Y'all know it. So I'm going to ride with the U, and I have to throw up the U. I have to. I got to ride with the Canes. Um, but it would not shock me at all if this is like a one possession game entering the fourth quarter. I really could see it happening. But I think Miami, hopefully, for my sake of my Cam Ward Heisman pick in the preseason, which still is so far so good. If it can continue, I would love to see it. So I'm going to hope that they get the job done and win at Cal, despite everything really seems like going against them.
Well, I'm going to take Cal. I think that the Golden Bears are going to get the job done. I drank the Kool-Aid for the Cal Golden Bears, and I really wanted to win last week, but they didn't. But Miami, look, they didn't play their best football game last week. They won a game that, per the rules of football, they should not have won. That's just the video replay rules that anybody has the ability to look up. Also, if you're out there, we're curious. Me and Ethan Rock, we're trying to figure it out. Can we Freedom of Information Act the ACC to figure out exactly what happened in the control room that led to that decision for Miami to win? We want all the evidence if we can get it. Anybody who's an expert in the Freedom Information Act, let us know. If we can get that get a hold of all that information from the
Listen,
ACC.
I'll join in on that. I want answers too. I mean, and that's coming from someone who is a Miami Hurricane guy. But I mean, it was just such a weird situation that it needs answers. It needs answers.
Yeah, again, right call, but wrong call at the same time because it just breaks the rules of what's written in the text. So, but I'm gonna go with you should have gotten stunned last week. They looked rough. I think they looked beatable. I think that gives a team like Cal some confidence to come out and shock the world and get the win against the Hurricanes. Heading on to our final segment, the bet of the week. Look, it's a weekend of college football. It's going to be a fun one. What's your bet of the week this week? You got anything fun for us?
So I'm in the spirit of, people saying this isn't really a big weekend. In the spirit of it, I'm gonna give out multiple in the spirit of it.
Okay.
People saying it to try to get them fired up. I don't know if you have multiple ready. If you don't, then it's okay. I'll only go. I have three ready, but I was only gonna say two.
Give as many as you want, and I'm just going to give one because I only had one ready. But
Okay. So the one that I was gonna say, regardless, this is probably at least in my opinion, this will be a massacre. Georgia minus 22 and a half against Auburn. I think they are going to destroy Auburn this weekend. It will not even be close. It will never be close at any point during the game. I am fully expecting, especially if you hear Kirby Smart's post-game speech to the team in the locker room, he's like, this next week's going to truly tell me what kind of football team we're going to be. And I'm expecting them to go out and kick Auburn's butt this weekend and dominate them. The other one, there's a couple that I was considering for this game. Um, but in the end, I decided, you know what? I'm still bitter about Arkansas State beating UCA earlier this year, even though they didn't. Speaking of questions in the control room,
yeah,
what about what happened with that call in that UCA Arkansas State
yeah,
game?
that was bad.
It, beyond bad. So, you know what? I am a bitter man. I am always a bitter man if I want to be. So, just for that, give me South Alabama -3 to go in and beat Arkansas State this weekend. That's my other one. I got you two for this weekend. Take them both. That pick is for UCA, and I'm wearing the UCA shirt. So, this is for UCA and UCA only. You got screwed. This is what happens. You're going to get embarrassed by South Alabama this weekend.
Wow. Go out and show them. Well, for my bet of the week, I am going to take Vanderbilt plus 22 and a half against Alabama. Look, it's a big spread, but I'm not just going for it because it's a big spread. This Vanderbilt team looks a lot better than they have in years past. Alabama's coming off a big emotional win. I think they're going to win this game. I think they'll probably still win it comfortably, but I think Vanderbilt's going to keep it closer than people expect them to. And that's the reason I'm going to say Vanderbilt plus 22 and a half.
I I had a feeling you were gonna pick this game. It was a give my mind. I was like 22. Austin's still gonna pick Vanderbilt in that game.
Yeah,
I felt confident that you were gonna pick that one. So, but I think it could be fun. Listen, Vanderbilt snuck up and almost beat Missouri in another top 10 team. Bama, they're number one. Everyone's like, oh, Bama number one, singing their praises. Could they kind of fall asleep and let Vanderbilt sneak in for a cover against them? I could see it happening.
absolutely. But with all that being said, that'll do it for us here at the Bold Take Podcast. Look, make sure to go listen to our NFL episode. It'll come out after this one. But
Hey,
that's
Devontae Adams trade news. We're going to talk all about that. It's going to be unique. Plus, I'll go ahead and say it with us recording that on Friday morning. All the wild card series will be wrapped up by then for MLB. I'm going to want this man's baseball predictions for the division series to the World Series. So that will be a special thing in the NFL episode as well. So that Devontae Adams trade rumors and all the stuff that happened this in the NFL this weekend, including the Steelers unfortunately suffering their first loss. No, I do not want to talk about it. Um, I'll talk about it in the NFL episode.
all righty. But that's Awesome Waiter. I'm Austin Hill. We want to thank you for listening.